Mm,
Okay. Good.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Dear all, welcome to SPJMR's CWIL's Wisdom Research Seminar Series. Today in the seminar, we have Vishal Gupta sir, who is a professor in the Organization Behavior area at the IMA at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. His areas of research and teaching include leadership and organization development, mindfulness, emotional intelligence, innovation management, ethics, and justice. His research has been published in international and national journals of repute and has been covered by national dailies like Times of India, Economic Times, DNA, Mint, People Matters, Business, and Business World. Vishal Gupta sir's leadership course on Coursera has been subscribed by more than 2 lakh individuals from around the world and has been ranked as one amongst the top 3 leadership courses of all times on the platform. He is also rated as top instructor on the platform on the same platform with a rating of 4.9 out of 5. We welcome you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Kritika, and thank you, Center, for having me here. So, what I'm going to present is a work that we are doing at IIM Ahmedabad, and this. Uh, Let me just. Can you see the screen? Yeah.
Yes, yes, we can see.
All right. So we call this as the HEAL resource and a new positive organizational behavior construct. The idea started just about the time COVID also hit. It started off actually by a course that I teach at IIM Ahmedabad. This is a second year elective, and we this is a term that I coined. I call it as HEAL, a mix of three capacities that I talk about. So of course, this beautiful quote from one of our Upanishads is something that inspires me all the time, which essentially alludes to the fullness, also the oneness that we all have within each one of us. Unfortunately, however, we keep seeing these news almost all the time. There are people who commit suicide due to work pressure. There are stress issues in campuses. Students who came to study unfortunately did something else, ended their lives. And there is a whole amount of talk which is around stress today. I'm sure many of you will know these statistics. 2019 survey of 2843 working professionals by LinkedIn found that about 49% felt stressed. The biggest driver was workload, lack of work-life balance, uncertainty about the future, and of course, in the age of AI, everything seems to be so uncertain, sense of purpose and direction rated as important factors that are driving stress today. Again, this was a report that got published just about 2 years ago. 76% of Indian workforce reports being feeling stressed, 49% admit mental health issues. 6 out of 10 people, 10 employees report that leaders, managers, or colleagues lack necessary tools and training to engage in mental health conversation. That means it's just not the problem on one side that employees experience, it's also that the organization just doesn't have the capacity to talk about these issues. Well, stress, we know the Dawson curve, which says that stress is important. And if you don't feel stress, then also it is problem. If you feel too much of stress, then it can lead to burnout and anxiety. So there is somewhere in between where the optimal performance really lies. It's not to say that we should live a life having no stress. Yeah, some stress is useful. We must also be able to manage that stress and not let that stress become constant. See, the problem when burnout happens is that people are under chronic stress. So the issue is not that people don't have stress, but the ability to manage it, ability to come back to our normal resting state is something that is very important. If somebody hasn't uh, been able to come back to resting state, then you will be on the right side of this. So we say, how does psychology really define? Stress is a phenomena which whereby individuals get exposed to stressors, external challenges or demand, the perceptual processing of the stressor, and finally the behavioral and physiological response. It's an internal state that reflects subject's inability to forestall or diminish perception, recall, anticipation, or imagination of disvalued circumstances that signify increased distance from desirable states. So, as I said from that previous graph, also, the problem is not really having stress in life. The problem is, can we uh, get back, move away from that perception of losing desirable states? Can we come back to our resting states and so on? So, I'm sure many of you would be familiar with this conservation of resources theory, which says that depletion of resources is the primary factor driving the stress process. Individuals engage in a process of coping by either developing new resources or through replenishment of depleted resources. So, if we understand that there is a perceived imbalance between demands and resources, and if you feel that resources have been depleted, then you will have a problem, right? If eventually we need to build resources, resources do not exist independently, but also travel collectively, akin to packs or caravans. And one resource may also lead to development of other resources. So these are some things that we'll keep in mind as I will take you through this. Now, the dominant issue that we all keep talking about, or dominant idea that we all keep talking about, is mindfulness, which is essentially you have a lot of trainings related to mindfulness and all of that. But today, mindfulness has eventually been narrowed down to attention or awareness. So it's actually, it has, even if you look at how the Western world looks at this idea of mindfulness, we essentially say attention, awareness to the present moment. However, one of the problems of mindfulness, or it's just not enough to train people in mindfulness. Mindfulness needs to be directed towards something. And that is what we are essentially trying to build. So, in our work, we are using mindfulness as a dominant paradigm, dominant approach. However, if you look at every theory, essentially, cognitive behavioral therapy, such a popular thing, psychobionomy, which came up very recently. Essentially, we are saying there are three things: there are actions, emotions, and cognition, thoughts, behavior, and affect. So, your mindfulness needs to be directed towards something, which is your behavior, emotions, and thinking. So, what are we saying? We are essentially saying that the problem that we have, stress, becomes suffering. Stress could be one time, stress could be limited, but when that stress becomes ongoing, it takes the form of suffering. At the cognitive level, we are self-centered in the sense that we keep thinking that everything is a problem with me. So the problem is that we get too involved. It's ruminative, constant comparison. All of these are problems with the thinking pattern. At the emotional level, you have reactivity, you have problems of maintaining your stability. At the behavioral level, you feel you are disconnected to meaning and contribution. Many of us, you see, midlife crisis is a crisis of meaning. While we keep working towards achieving certain goals, when man or woman we achieve, we reach everything, we become comfortable in our lives, we essentially ask, what is the meaning of all this? That is where the midlife crisis happens. Today's generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, you would even see that it's not just midlife. Today, we have started talking about quarter life crisis. So the crisis is happening even faster. And what is this crisis? The crisis is typically a crisis of meaning, right? So let me introduce you to this construct that we came up with. We call this as HEAL, which is made up of three core capacities or resources. We call it as harmony, equanimity, and authentic living. So, basing our model on what we know of CBT or psychobionomy, we all say that we are at three levels: emotions, thinking, and behavior. That is what we are targeting. We are saying harmony based thinking, which is at the cognitive level, where you reduce the self centeredness. That means I. Can we think about interconnectedness, oneness, thinking about harmony in our relationships, in our life, and so on? Equanimity is what we call as an emotional control, emotional stability. So, balance and non reactivity to impulses, non reactivity to certain emotions that you have. And finally, we call the AL part, which is authentic living, which is on your actions or behavior, which is about being value aligned, meaningful action for greater good. So, acting according to your values or strengths and uh, working towards a meaning or thinking about meaning. And we say that this heal is a second order construct which integrates the three core aspects of harmony, equanimity, and authentic living. So as I said, that these are we position this as three first order psychological resource: harmony based thinking, emotional equanimity, and authentic living, and we conceptualize it as a second order construct of healing. The overall definition is this is how we define heal: an individual's developmental capacity that drives harmonious thoughts, develops an equanimous outlook for emotions. There's a typo here, towards emotions, and encourages one to live according to one's true self, that is core strengths, and lead a life of meaning and purpose. What is the core tradition, the theoretical framework on which we are basing this? We are basing this on majorly two theories: conservation of resources theory, which says that stress occurs when resources are threatened or lost, and expected resource gains fails to materialize. So we are saying essentially, if we have to overcome stress or suffering in our life, we need to think about resources. And the second is we say that mindfulness is not enough. So there was a very nice work that came out in 2015, which calls it as mindfulness-to-meaning theory, that your awareness should facilitate positive regulation, emotional regulation, and should promote eudaimonia. That is eudaimonia, working towards a certain meaning or purpose. So it essentially talks about decentering from appraisals, stress appraisals, creating space for broader attention and flexible cognitive appraisals. And of course, we borrow analogies and support from our Eastern contemplative traditions through this. So, this is just a visual representation of mindfulness to meaning theory, that while the stress appraisal happens, we actually must teach people decentering and metacognitive awareness, that just the ability to decenter yourself from that stress appraisal and be aware, you direct that awareness to broaden attention to context. You kind of think in a different way. So we teach our students positive appraisals, attention to contextual features supporting reappraisals. Hopefully, that should lead to positive emotions. You savor things that are happening in life. So we talk about savoring. Savor not just the experience, but also the meaning of what you have achieved, what you are doing, and hopefully, over time, you will adapt and create or move towards a sense of purpose or meaning. So, eventually, the largest thing is, the highest thing is, can we develop a sense of eudaimonia in our life, rather than being driven by hedonism, right? Rather than just being looking after one experience after another, but also attaching meaning, understanding the positive meaning. So let me now just take you through these three ideas and how we have positioned this. So we call harmony as living with the belief that all living beings are interconnected, being sensitive towards the suffering of others, and willing to help others whenever opportunity arises. So we are building this, basing this idea of harmony-based thinking on the idea of core ideas of Eastern tradition, the spiritual interconnectedness, being touched by persons suffering, wanting to help them, and wishing them to be happy. So we are core basing this on oneness and loving kindness idea. Emotional equanimity, we call this as an even-minded mental state or dispositional tendency toward all experiences or objects regardless of their valence or source, unaffected by biases or preferences, impartial attitude toward all experiences and being. And finally, authentic living, we call it as being true to one's core values, acting in accordance with one's own strengths, and living a life of meaning and purpose, self awareness, and self expression. So, there is a lot of work which talks about strength based living. Martin Seligman's work on strength based, and then there is this famous work on logotherapy by Viktor Frankl, talked about man's search for meaning. So we are basing this idea of authentic living that you act according to your core strengths and also constantly ask yourself that am I living a life of meaning and uh, purpose. So this is a piece that we published last year where we talked about the heal capacities. We talked about H, E, and authentic living. And essentially, if you look at positive organizational behavior, you have to talk about that it is measurable, it is related to performance or outcomes, and it is developmental in nature. So, when we are positioning HEAL as a POB construct, we are essentially currently working towards establishing that HEAL is developmental in nature, HEAL can be measured, and HEAL has relationships or impact on outcomes. So these are the three conditions that should satisfy in order for a construct to be labeled as a POB construct. So let me now talk about what is some work that we are currently doing and what evidence we have got so far on conceptualizing HEAL as a construct, developing its measure, and testing its predictive and incremental validity over just mindfulness. And we have also using data trying to test if HEAL can moderate stress to job satisfaction relationship. So this is some work, and I will present the data now. This is the paper, this is the book chapter I talked about, where we published just the core idea of HEAL. Now, let me take you through the scale development and the validation work around HEAL that we've just finished, and the results seem to be promising. So we took scale development and the qualitative piece. Any scale development work is a mixed method work. It's a sequential, qualitative, quantitative research design. Qualitative is where you look at the experiences of people, where we interviewed professionals. So we did conducted about 23 interviews in depth, and also reviewed the literature around these three constructs. We did 4 rounds of exploratory factor analysis. So we collected data multiple times. So the first 2 rounds were around item refinement, which were with management students and was 276. Then third and fourth round is where we actually collected data from working professionals, 392. And finally, the CFA and the validation testing happened using prolific sample of about 490 respondents, working professionals. Uh, so let me just take you through. So we've got evidence of a 17 item heal measure. Okay. These are, and you can see they load cleanly on uh, 3 separate factors. The Cronbach alpha seem to be all right. We did CFA result with 2 models. We did the hypothesized 3 factor, the chi-square, CFI, GMI, all of the GFI, versus just a 1 factor where everything loads onto 1 factor. Okay. Cronbach's alpha there as well looks fine. Okay, so we then did this analysis controlling for demographics, also a marker variable. We checked the relationship between each of these dimensions, harmony, equanimity, and authentic living, with job satisfaction, and the results seem to be fine. After controlling for mindfulness, also we find that heal, overall second order heal, is positively and significantly related to job satisfaction. We also did a moderation analysis where we said that if there are stressors could deplete or reduce job satisfaction. And we hypothesized that if a person is high on the heal resource, then this relationship will be it will be weaker. This negative relationship will be weaker. Harmony, we saw there is a significant positive interaction. Equanimity as a dimension did not kind of come as a significant moderator. It was not significant. Authentic living. And when we looked at heal overall, the second order, the heal does come overall significant. So out of harmony, equanimity, authentic living as individual dimensions, equanimity, we do not see evidence, but harmony, authentic living, and overall heal, we do see that they work in the expected hypothesized direction. So, what are we saying in this essentially work that we've done so far? We are also doing a time lapse study currently with students who have taken our course, and we'll be able to, yeah, we'll analyze those results as the data comes in. Heal, we call it as an integrative mode of functioning, like other POB constructs. Developmental capacity across cognition, emotion, and behavior. We also talk about that it responds to mindfulness fragmentation. That means it is different from mindfulness, and it kind of talks about how mindfulness can actually build these 3 capacities in individuals. There is a relationship that we are seeing, impact we are seeing on stress for performance or stress job satisfaction. Hopefully, as we build along, this would open up space for more such work and engagement. What are some of the things that we are doing in terms of taking this idea forward? We are uh, including this in management education. So, as I said, one of the things, so we have a curriculum that we have developed uh, where we call it as mindfulness based happiness or mindfulness based heal, which is harmony, equanimity, and authentic living. We again just we argue or we kind of talk about that it's not just enough to teach people meditation or awareness. We need to go beyond just mindfulness or awareness, and we need to start talking about harmony, equanimity, and authentic living. Shift from surface level stress management to integrated approaches. And the intervention should be at three levels, which is harmony, equanimity, and authentic living. And of course, this work in 2015 very well captured that all these techniques, mindfulness, or all these ideas should not make a case that employees should tolerate toxic environments. Of course, you must do whatever you can to voice, to act, do everything that you can to fight toxicity or move away from toxicity. If you can, leave the organization, leave the workplace. But in case you can't, or even after trying, you still see there is something, it's about coping with whatever bad exists in the organization. Limitations, well, at the moment, the working population is prolific, and the prolific respondents seem to be more Western. So we are, again, our next effort would be to collect a similar data from Indian working population. However, we do think that because it's a psychological capacity, Western or Indian data set doesn't matter much. Self-report measures. So HEAL is a self-report instrument. We think that's the best way to do it. But if there are other ways, there could be multi-source data, could also there could be other ways of testing it or capturing data on HEAL. Okay. Uh, all equanimity items were reverse coded. So that is one reason maybe why equanimity does work differently than harmony and authentic living. Again, possible future thing could be to try writing positive items and then see what's happening to equanimity dimension. What are some of the things that we are doing currently? We are trying to position this work for the global audience and especially, of course, in the Indian context. So we are writing articles. As I said, we are doing this work, these preliminary scale. There is a PhD dissertation that is being done on this idea at IMA. Um, in my own courses on Coursera, different platforms, I have been talking about this, and learners are taking this. They are learning from this, and hopefully, we'll also test using this data. We'll figure out some ways where the respondents to these online courses could also respond to the survey. We teach this at IMA. There is a curriculum. Happy to share the curriculum also with anybody who's interested. It's being offered to PGP, PGPX. We've created a training program for professionals. There is an executive program. We call it as HEAL, Leadership, Mindful Leadership for Self and Organizational Transformation. The feedback is positive. We've offered at multiple places this program. We see there is pre-post we have done, there is improvement between the pre and post. So that is something. So yeah, that is what our core thesis is, that the cure is a heal resource and the most powerful healer is within. Stressors or demands will not go away. We need to build resources, and heal is a resource that talks about taking charge of your mind, your thinking, practicing emotional control, and living authentically. And yeah, the Heal offers an integrative framework for how people think, feel, and act when facing difficulty at work, moves beyond self management towards a fuller engagement with humanity of organizational. Yeah, if you want to heal your heart's wound, start healing your thoughts. And happiness truly is taking control, taking charge of your own happiness. Uh, there is importance of thinking, taking charge of your thinking, emotions, and living. All right, so I'll stop here, and that is what I just wanted to. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Dear audience, the floor is now open to questions, and please go ahead.
Yes, sir, I have too many
Hmm.
questions. So, first, a very interesting work in terms of we as a scholar never thought of combining both a research paper or research along with development of parallel a course. So, I'm very curious. So, did you evolve the course first or did the research came first?
Actually, the course happened first, and the course started off by integrating the ideas of mindfulness. So we started off teaching people meditation and yeah, thinking and all of that. However, right from the word go, we had coined it as heal, right? So we did talk about, of course, you see, CBT, these ideas of behavior, thinking, and emotions, these are not recent. These have been there throughout. So we talked about how can mindfulness really help us in uh, uh, addressing these dimensions. However, then over time we realized that why shouldn't we then also create our own conceptualization of this heal, right? Because if we have to talk about it in a scientific manner through an evidence, right, then we must also think about measuring it, developing it, testing whether it changes over time, it changes pre post. So all of those thoughts went in, and that is when we started doing this scale development, validity kind of a work. From our first course onwards, we did used to collect um, pre and post. Okay. But pre and post were always on established methods. So, for example, there is a Oxford Happiness Inventory, OHI. So, we used to measure pre heal, post heal, what has happened to your happiness level. What we used to measure emotional quotient, right? Emotional stability. Now, what we are doing, last 2 years onwards, we collect data on the heal scale before and after on the student population from the student. That is how the first two EFAs happened, which was on student population. We refined it and then went to the professionals and then again did this. So, yeah, the idea was about doing a course, but then we felt that there is a scope for doing research also on this, and why not establish this or work as a POB construct that comes from uh, India. Yeah.
So next question is, so the word heal you use. So I'm sure that when you teach the course, it means healing from the stress or something sort of. But when you bring it to the research or research paper, you are deriving the three words H, E, and then A. So in the research, do you discuss the exact meaning of heal that you use for teaching purpose, or is it just acronym coming from HEA? Just
No, it is I showed you on one slide, there is a definition of heal, right?
okay.
Which is what we call it as a developmental capacity that drives harmonious thoughts,
So you
equanimity.
have defined, yeah, got it. You have defined, given the
Define it, right? So we do define H, E, and AL also, and then we also give that if I have to explain heal to somebody, what is my core definition of heal? What is our definition of heal? Which is talking about three developmental capacities of harmonious thoughts, harmonious thinking, equanimous outlook towards life experiences, and living according to core strengths and a life of meaning.
So as you said, so it is a second order construct. It's an overall construct is heal and then the three dimension. So it appears that it is reflective.
It is reflective,
Reflective.
reflective at the first order, reflective at the second order. Yeah.
So from asking, just asking from the perspective of research or from reviewer's point, many a times a reviewer question that why it is reflective, why not formative. So do we need to give reason in such kind of papers justify that why it is this and not that?
So, see, any construct can actually be conceptualized as formative or reflective. There is no answer to this question. The answer is, what am I conceptualizing? So, if you think that your second order is driving harmonious thoughts, equanimous outlook, and authentic living, then it is a reflective. But if you say H, E, and AL together make up the second order construct, then it is going to be a formative. So the answer, Ravi, would be how have I conceptualized this construct? And I expect that there is some commonality between these H, E, and AL. That is why I am saying that they will be reflective in nature. Formative, typically, there is no reason to believe they will be correlated to each other or there will be any shared commonality between these. Socioeconomic status, for example, can also be conceptualized as a reflective construct, though it is a formative construct, right? So, yeah, you could argue both ways. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir, I had a question.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so you mentioned about the burnout curve, and that burnout is the stress is not the problem. Longer duration chronic stress is a problem, and then coming back to that equanimous
Yes.
state or natural state is the problem. So, with
Yes.
respect to burnout treatment, so there is both prevention and also recovery. So, how do you
Yes.
place your heal as a construct? As a name,
So,
it's yeah. So, yeah, you may answer.
uh, so we are calling this as a prevention,
Yeah.
right? That you build your resource. You build your resource so that you don't need to go there or you are not there on the burnout. So we call this as a developmental capacity, which will help you manage your life experiences better, right?
Mhm.
The other is that it has already happened. It could be used to do they go there, address that. But you see, when burnout or depressions do happen, you really need intensive therapy. So one of the things we tell our students also that this course is not a substitute for any therapy that you may be going, right? You may need counseling intervention, you may need some medication intervention. Do not stop that. Use this as an additional help. And for people who are not there, we can help you not to be there, right? That is the thing. So we would say it's more on the prevention side.
So yeah, even research is more now toward, like, I read an article that they are saying we should do the prevention rather than going for recovery.
And look at it now, Banaji, the whole positive psychology literature originated that we should not be talking about when the issues have happened. Right? The focus of psychology was negativity, that we are there to treat psychological disorders. What is positive? Why? And you see, that is the whole idea of POB, right? Positive organization. What is positive in you? Can you develop that? So that you don't need to, you can avoid reaching the disease phase. Okay? And so yeah, that is the thing.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So while conceptualizing this heal model, did you also think about including the good stress as well as the bad stress? Like here, we are talking about removing the stress, but I feel we should also feel some amount of stress to be able
Yes,
to exercise
absolutely.
it in better manner.
Absolutely. So I showed you that slide where we talk about hindrance stress. Hindrance stress, and it did moderate, right? There is also another stress which is called as challenger stress. So the challenger stress is actually good. Hindrance stress is bad.
Bad.
So we saw no relationship there. So when people look at it as a challenger stress, we didn't see they are moderating. Okay. So we did measure both hindrance stress and challenger stress. Challenger stress is when people look at the work as a challenge. Right? Maybe so we are arguing that maybe you do, because it's already positive, this doesn't come in. But when people look at it as a hindrance, right, we see that this construct does moderate those relationships. So yeah, we did measure, answer to your question, that there are two stresses, hindrance and challenger. We measured both and saw what's the relationship between them.
Okay. And one is on the methods side, like in the psychometrics. Like, how did we go about generating the items, like the items that we generated?
Yeah. So we interviewed 23 people. We did the transcription, okay, and we also did. So we call this as deductive coding. We also were aware of the literature. So we also read the literature. So the items that we got, some items actually come from existing constructs. So equanimity, for example, is also a construct. Talked about in not much, but in some papers, equanimity is also there. Authentic living is also there. Okay, oneness as a construct is also there. So we looked at the literature. We also did interviews. We asked people about questions open-ended about your experience of stress. How do you cope with it on the emotion side, on the thinking side, on the behavior side? So the items were emerged from our coding of the interviews and also mapping them to existing literature that we had. So that is how it was. So let me just let me just share this. So this is a paper. If you see the items with their sources, so we have mapped. So we started off with all these items, and we have written that H1, for example, we had, but we also refined it based on interviews. Right? This item, for example, came from interviews. So we have created this table. where we are saying that there are items, item sources, references, papers. So all these are AL items with which we started initially. These are all the equanimity items. I was telling you they are all reverse worded,
Reverse coded.
and then these were the harmony
Hmm.
items,
Hmm.
right? So 10 plus 11 plus 12, right? So these were the items that we started off with. And then, so it came from coding of interview transcripts as well as reading the
Okay.
papers and mapping them. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like an out of context kind of question. So, was there a panel sitting on this, or like was it like done
So
with?
basically, two people. Generally, you need one person can also do, but two is recommended. And more, two
Hmm.
or more, right?
More.
So
Okay.
me and the PhD student,
Hmm.
we read,
Okay.
we coded.
Hmm. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I see a hand raised by Mr. Kunal. Yes.
Hi, sir. The Indian civilizational wisdom actually captures this in the form of dharma, uh, the uh, the things that are captured in the framework. But I think the trouble is that the modern organization is mostly Western,
Of
and
course.
at the same time, West does not have as in dharma is a Sanskrit word, right? So they do not have that notion of dharma, and uh, currently, as in most of us across the world, we are working in a construct which is mostly Western, and and therefore, as in a lot of these workspaces are also toxic because uh, as in they are essentially formed on the basis of greed. The organizations, for example, uh, so so they do not actually take into account the Indian civilizational wisdom that our rishis, etc., had, and
Right.
so. But yeah, as in this is very intuitive for an Indian, but
Yes. So that
it
is,
is, yeah,
yes, yes. So that is why, Kunal, you see, we are trying to balance the two because remember, the problem with an Indic research is that you really need to find a space in a Western journal. That's the
yeah,
problem. That
yeah,
is the problem of our society and for the academicians. So, for example, equanimity, we do talk about sthit pragya
yeah,
in the class we talk about sthit pragya, right?
yeah,
Which is of course anybody who knows Gita and everything, we talk about sthit pragya as an act. Harmony, we talk about oneness. Oneness is a purely
yeah,
Indian or the
Advait,
Eastern Advait, right? Non-duality.
yeah,
So we talk about non-duality, we talk about oneness. These are core
yeah,
Indian ideas. Oneness, as I was mentioning to Kritika, there is some research which has started to happen on oneness, right?
mhm,
Loving kindness has been adopted yeah, in the literature. Authentic living, as I said, we talk about strengths living,
yeah, yeah,
building,
Swadharma,
right? So
yeah,
these are ideas that, of course, do exist, and we do talk about that in the class.
yeah.
But here we are doing an academic research which needs to talk to Western audience.
Completely, yeah, and West needs to basically know this
Yeah.
so that they can build positive organizations, basically.
Yes, yes. And that is what I also mentioned that you see, even when Buddha talked about mindfulness,
Yeah,
Buddha also talked about living a life of honesty and a whole lot of things which resonate very well with the So what did they adopt in their mindfulness thing? They talked about everything that is secular and has nothing to do with the thing, right? So very interestingly, they have adopted more of so you will see a lot of work on mindfulness, but you will very rarely see work on core Hindu ideas or Indian wisdom tradition. So I think, of course, that's a very different conversation we can get into. But yeah, our challenge is we are trying to balance these two things.
Sure,
So
sure.
that is why I said conservation of resources theory, mindfulness to meaning theory, and Eastern traditions. Yeah. Yes, Priyanka.
No, sir. Sir, when you define heal, so you defined it in two different ways. One is at component level, and the other is at the level category you showed. So, can we are these similar thing, or can we operationalize while developing a scale? Can we operationalize at component level and also at the second category that you are calling levels? So, can we define it in two different ways?
See, at the individual level, Priyanka, you will have to define the individual components,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So H, E, and A. And at the second level, the higher level, you will define the overarching construct, which is so you will need to give a statement to define the second order. Either you don't talk about the second order and just stay at first order capacities, or you talk about the second order. So you will have to define the composite that is emerging, the common construct that is emerging after combining HE and AL. So that is why we have given these at the individual level. It's not heal definition, but the definition of harmony separately, equanimity separately, and authentic living separately.
Sir,
Right?
why I am asking this? Because I am developing a scale, so it is at two different level. One is at capability level, and one is at mechanism level, and the core scale is same. So in one of my paper that is under review, I defined it in terms of mechanisms, and the same construct I can define it at capability level also. So that
So
question.
in that case, of course, I think you will have two different definitions because mechanism and what capability, right, or
Yes,
process
sir.
will be
Yes, sir.
different. Will be
But
different.
both mechanism and capability, they are going parallelly, like
They
they
are
are
going parallel,
equivalent.
so they are like two dimensions of your construct.
So,
Two dimensions, right? If I understand it correctly, maybe it's like two dimensions or two separate constructs also. One is at the mechanism level, one it as the capability level. In that case, it should be defined separately.
okay, sir.
So whatever the construct, but I'm here talking about the mechanism. Whatever the construct, I'm here talking about the capability.
Got it, sir. And sir, while you are talking about these three dimension H, E, and the AL, so a person can have only one dimension, or are they coexisting, or they are distinct
So
layers?
we are,
Like,
yeah, we are saying they are distinct. They could be in different capacities, but so in our conceptualization, we say that they do work together. They do work together. There is commonality, right? That is why we are conceptualizing a shared second order construct. And the conservation of resources theory also says that development of one will lead to development of the other. So resources don't work independently, they also move in packs as caravans, right? So they can lead to development
And so during the process of data collection and when you are doing the data analysis thing, maybe it is the case that only the first order construct, first order level, like the data is aligned with only first order level. And it is not, in theory, you are kind of assuming that it is second
Yes,
order, but maybe the results come otherwise. So, sir,
of
what
course
should
it can. If that happens, you will have to go back to the drawing board, revise your
yes?
items, right? We did 4 rounds of EFA, 4 rounds of exploratory factor analysis. So we would collect the data on the items, see what's happening, go back, revise them, come back, revise them again. So we took 4 iterations of that data collection to just refine our set of items. Once we had a clear structure, then only you move to confirmation or checking it on. So, yeah, of course, that will happen. We thought it would be just one, but we did it twice. Then we went to working population. There also we collected data twice to refine. Then, so we had data from students, we had data from working professionals. So that is why you would refine the items again and again.
Your paper is already published. This one
It
paper you are
is,
talking.
yeah, the conceptual piece has come out, but we have sent it to AOM this year, and of course the idea is to finalize this paper and send it out.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
I have one question. So it was wonderful presentation and nice conceptualization, and it's very heartening to see that it's connection with Indic wisdom. So while talking about equanimity, you connected it with sthita prajna. But when we look at sthita prajna, prajna means
Yes.
discernment, the ability to discern and the ability to discriminate. So it has to do more with the cognition. So do you see any challenge when we are trying to equate emotional aspect of this heal construct with sthita prajna? Because sthita prajna will also encompass cognitive aspect of the construct.
Yes, yes. So you see, that is also one reason why the argument is that these capacities go together, right? That we are saying on one hand, you are building your thinking, harmonious thinking, and you are also building your emotional stability. So the emotional stability comes by looking at the experience in the stability. So how we defines Pragya, we call it as a person of stable wisdom. Wisdom is the thinking part or stable. So being able to use your thinking to be able to manage the emotional triggers that one is experiencing. At the background, yes, there is a thinking component, but we are capturing the equanimity bit that we are talking about is capturing how do you see those emotional experiences or emotional triggers? Are you able to manage those? Right. So the conceptualization of equanimity is about emotional triggers. It's not about thinking. Uh, the thinking is captured in the harmony.
Okay. So just one last question that from my side. So uh, are we saying that there is a process, there is underlying process where the cognition happens first, then comes
Yes,
emotional
yes,
response, and
yes. So,
then
so how we teach it to students, let me tell you, we first broadly we spend about some time helping them understand the problem. Then we talk about mindfulness as a process, where we talk about what are we saying, which is training your awareness to be on what you want it to be on. Then we first teach them cognition and then talk about using that cognition to help see emotional experiences a little better. How do you manage your emotions then? And finally, with H and E in place, we talk about the bigger thing, which is about your strength-based living and meaning in life. Yeah. So there is, and that is all the more reason I think that there should be this overarching conceptualization of heal. That the heal, that concept is driving your H, E, and AL at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I think no more questions.
Yeah, I guess we had like a very wonderful discussion and very interesting questions. Once again, I'd like to thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation, and also to the audience for the wonderful questions so that we could understand and discuss more on this. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you, everyone. Thank you. All the
Thank you,
best.
sir.
Yes. Thank you.